Okay, Bio2, we're jumping in with the second part of leaves. We looked at their structure last time, so now we're going to take a look at the function of leaves. So the leaf function. So most leaves, they consist of a specialized ground tissue that's known as mesophyll. So I'm going to make that bigger so you can see it. So mesophyll is how you say that. And we have two types, so it's this kind of filler material within here. Remember, that's what we said ground tissue is, but this filler material is actually going to serve a specific function. So our first function is we're going to look at what's called the palisade mesophyll. So the layer of mesophyll cells found directly under the epidermis is called the palisade mesophyll. So we can see right here, palisade mesophyll. And these closely packed cells absorb light that enter the leaf. So we can tell that there's a definite difference here between this top layer and this bottom layer. So the top layer more closely packed together, and this bottom layer is more spread out and kind of more spongy looking, which that's actually going to be its name, so we'll get to that in a second. But just know this top layer is going to absorb light that enters the leaf. So then our next function here of the leaf is beneath the palisade mesophyll is the spongy mesophyll. So like I said, it looked a little bit spongy. It's this area right here. This bracket actually is a little bit off. It just should be pointing to this area right through here. And this is a loose tissue with many air spaces between its cells. So this is looser and has air spaces. And we're going to talk about why it needs those air spaces. So these spaces connect with the exterior through what are known as stomata, or a singular would be a stoma. And these are pore-like openings in the underside of the leaf that allow carbon dioxide, or CO2, and oxygen to diffuse into and out of the leaf. So these holes, these stoma or stomata, are going to allow CO2 to diffuse into the spongy air pockets up here, and they're going to allow oxygen to diffuse out. And each stoma consists of two guard cells. So you can see here on each side we have guard cells. And these are specialized cells that control the opening and closing of the stomata by responding to changes in water pressure. So these guard cells will open and close based off the pressure of water. So that's kind of, go back here, we have guard cells, stoma or stomata, same thing, spongy mesophyll, and palisade mesophyll all help with the leaf function. And so one of the leaf functions is to carry out a process known as transpiration. And the reason kind of how this falls in with the plants, the surfaces of the spongy mesophyll, remember spongy mesophyll is this area right here, are kept moist so gases can enter and leave the cells easily. So water evaporates from these surfaces and is lost to the atmosphere. So that's kind of transpiration is, they kind of just said it, but they'll give it to you again, is the loss of water through its leaves. This water loss is replaced by water drawn into the leaf through xylem vessels and the vascular tissue. So it is kind of almost a necessary evil to keep water moving. We're going to have to lose some in order to keep it flowing in. So transpiration is the loss of water through the leaves of plants. Now this is a very controlled process. They don't want to lose too much. They're just going to lose the right amount. And we're going to look at how they regulate that here in a little bit. And so then now the last part of a leaf function is for gas exchange, and we're going to look at how does gas exchange take place in a leaf. So plant leaves allow gas exchange, mainly being CO2 and oxygen, between the air spaces in the spongy mesophyll and the exterior by opening their stomata. So stomata help with transpiration as well as gas exchange. And plants keep their stomata open just enough to allow photosynthesis to take place, but not so much that they lose an excessive amount of water. So again, that's what I was saying here. They're not gonna, it's a controlled process. They're not just gonna lose all their water. They're gonna have it controlled, and they're gonna lose only the right amount to carry out their photosynthesis, and then they're gonna keep in the rest to make sure that it can survive and will survive. And the guard cells, again, are the specialized cells that control the stomata. Again, this is a water review. And they open and close in responses to changes in water pressure within the guard cells. So again, this is kind of a lot of repeating itself. They kind of function the same way here. So now these kind of finishing up here towards the end, we're going to look at an open stomata. So when the water pressure within guard cells is high, the stoma are open. So we have a good view here of our two guard cells right here and right here. So we have a high water pressure, so we're going to let the stoma open. Maybe some water will evaporate, we'll lose some water that's necessary, but we'll carry out photosynthesis and everything will be good within the plant. So we have enough water, so that is why the guard cells are open. So when the water pressure within the guard cells decreases, that's saying, uh-oh, we're having a little bit of a water loss here, we're going to need to replenish, the stoma will close. So the stoma being closed will keep any water from losing due to evaporation. So then plants regulate the opening and closing of their stomata to balance water loss with rates of photosynthesis. Again, just repeating. And stoma are open in daytime when photosynthesis is active and closed at night to prevent water loss. So usually the stomata are going to be open in the daytime when photosynthesis is active, and photosynthesis is going to take place during the daytime because that's when the sunlight's out, and that's why that's when they're going to need to take in all their energy. And then in hot, dry conditions, stomata may close even in bright sunlight to conserve water. So the main function here, the plants are going to want to keep in as much water as possible. They're not always going to be open. They'll only be open in the right conditions. So that is it for leaves. Let me know if you have any questions.